Morning. This is the face of joy. It's kind of blurry. Joy often occurs in motion. It's really hard to get a good picture of it. Can't really predict when it's going to happen. It's spontaneous. That's also the face of joy. Again, unpredictable, sometimes untidy, sometimes has its mouth full. And that's joy. This also is joy. Joy can be peaceful, serene, beautiful. So that picture is a picture of my oldest daughter, Tessa, and my youngest daughter, who is not just the personification of joy, but her name is Willa Joy. We knew something when she was born. So an observation, Willa's almost 10. I had to go back 5 years to find these pictures. And I have thousands of pictures of my kids. And what struck me is that when children are born, when all of us are born, we have an innate ability to experience and express joy. As we get older, that becomes more muted. So between 5 and 10, we get these implicit and sometimes explicit instructions. Calm down, be serious, settle down. And as we become adults, that becomes even more pronounced. We learn to mute our reactions to things. We're not as joyful, because joy is unserious, and there's a lot about life that needs to be serious. In particular, we're taught to believe that this is what work looks like. Work is quite serious. We take our job seriously. We're doing a serious job. We're not going to be joyful. This is true for both men and women in different ways. I think it's particularly true for women who worry that they can be seen as unserious if they are joyful. My company just hired a fantastic director of digital advertising. Her biggest concern in the interview process was that she was bubbly and might be seen as unserious. She's fantastic. She's a great culture fit. But heaven forbid she'd be seen as bubbly. We might think that she might not be good at her job. So why can't this be the face of work? Wheelhouse is kind of a heretical place. We do things in very strange ways, but ways that work really well for us. And so my question was, why can't work be joyful? Why can't joy be a core value? Why can't it animate our work? Why can't it be something that we deliberately chase after? What if we actually pursue joy? Joy isn't something, in my experience and in our shared experience, that just happens to you. It's different than happiness. Happiness is important, but happiness is sort of superficial. Joy is, to me, the definition that I share with people at work, the definition that we live. It is a euphoric emotional response that is unself-conscious, that is attached to and springs from something that is deeply held within you. It's associated with your identity. It comes from your soul. It's different than happiness. It's more meaningful. It creates a different chemical response in your brain. It animates your work in a different way. It creates different relationships. Joy is a core value at Wheelhouse. We have 5 core values. They are helpfulness, generosity, trustworthiness, stewardship, and joy. And I will tell you, and everyone at Wheelhouse will tell you, that joy is the hardest to achieve, and it is the most important as well. It makes such a difference in everything that we do. And we pursue joy in lots of ways, but there are ways that are deep. Joy can have to do with the work that we do. It can have to do with the relationships that we build. It can have to do with our shared experiences. But in pursuing it, we change the nature of the people who work at Wheelhouse, and we change the nature of the company, and we fuel tremendous growth. Culture is our entire strategy. That's it. There are about 120,000 marketing agencies in the US. Most of them are digital in some form or fashion. Many of them do fantastic work, and we do phenomenal work. We're a performance-driven digital marketing firm. We live and die by the results that we generate for our clients. We have no business development. We don't have any salespeople. For the longest time, and by the longest time I mean until June 27th of this year, I was business development. People called, people emailed, they asked for help, and we helped them. The way that we generate business is that we're helpful to everyone we come in contact with. We're generous with our time, and we have confidence that when we're generous, people will be generous back. We'll look out for them, they'll look out for us, just like we're the nice people we were outside of work, we're gonna bring that inside of work. And our experience is that when you do that, people respond in kind. Empathy and joyfulness are the foundations for everything that we do. For us, the strategy is that it's the experience of working with us and working for us that sets us apart, that differentiates us from these other 120,000 agencies. So how has that worked out? So David mentioned we've grown 4 years in a row at 60%. We had 1 year where we grew at 35%, and so that brought us down to 55% over 5 years. So diminished, but not much. We've been an Inc. 5000 honoree for the last 3 years. We were named one of the 200 best places to work in the US by Inc. magazine last year, and have similar accolades from Puget Sound Business Journal and the Seattle Business Magazine. These are the kinds of clients we work with. We work with NASA, we work with the Metropolitan Museum of Art, with Bluetooth, with Providence, big companies where you might think that our values and our engagement approach won't work, but they do, and they create really long-term relationships. We have multi-year relationships with virtually every client we come in contact with. So what we're going to describe today really has value, really works, and can work for you. Our experience is that joy is not just a precursor for a phenomenal work experience, it's a precursor to phenomenal work. If you can associate people's work with deep meaning and a sense of joy, you get amazing results from them. You get amazing client retention. You get lots of inbound resumes so that you have to do virtually no recruiting, and you get amazing candidates who you look at and think, I don't know that we deserve to get this person applying for this job, but we'll certainly take it. So today we're going to talk with you about a few things. We'll talk about creating the conditions for joy, how to hire for joy, cultivating joy, developing and expressing joy, and the byproducts of joy as well. What happens at our company? What happens in the community as we do all of this? Cindy leads HR for the company. She's been with us for years. She is the person who really activates our culture and has done a phenomenal job. And I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you. Hi. So first I want to talk about the importance of place and investing in choices that set the stage for joy. So we have this gorgeous office that looks out over the water. If you're from Seattle, we're on the Ship Canal. It's beautiful. We get to look at these boats every day. We have a relatively fully stocked bar, a fully built out kitchen, and also just little unique pieces of artwork around the office that really elicit different emotions and say, hey, this is a place where there should be opportunities for laughter and fun and whimsy. Speaking of whimsy, that's our VP of Engineering riding a scooter around our office. So our office is also set up in a way that encourages people to use the space, to laugh, to have fun. Of course, we're working, but like Erin said, work doesn't have to be this serious all the time kind of place. And so we've created opportunities for this sort of explicit and implicit opportunity for people to use things to have joy. I specifically want to talk about what it means to hire for joy. So a few of the different speakers have talked about the importance of hiring people for your culture, and we absolutely believe that. So when we're thinking about hiring people and thinking about what it means to hire for joy, we're looking for people who have a sense of personal agency that they can create joy. That joy is something that they actually deserve and they want to find in the workplace. It's something they thought about. We are not looking for people who are just thinking work's a place to gut it out, like you're just gonna make it happen, it's gonna be fine. And we want people who are excited to do the work that they're doing and think that Wheelhouse is gonna be a place where they can find that same sort of joy.
Just one quick point here. So the first point, strong intrinsic drive. So we're an eclectic group of people. There's little that unifies us except the work that we do and the fact that the people we hire are really strongly motivated intrinsically. They love what they do, and they would do the work, they do the work when they're not at Wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. And so our role, my role as CEO, our role as managers and leaders in the company is to make sure that they don't burn themselves out, that they actually don't do too much, to both steer and rate limit the effort, and to make sure that they experience fully what they're doing, that we remind them, right? Enjoy where you are, look outside. Several of us love being on the water. Some of us love fantastic coffee. Some of us love great wine. Some of us love a great cocktail. There are all these things that are there that are signifiers. Look where you are, enjoy these things, enjoy your experience, don't burn yourself out. And we do it first by doing these things as leaders. The guy on the scooter is the VP of Engineering. The people on the leadership team try to do these things most visibly.
Thanks. I did want to give kind of a couple of thoughts on how we interview. So these are some of the questions that we ask in our interview process that go at specifically looking for empathy or people skills, that look for humility, which we've also found to be key in creating a space for joy, and people who are generous. So like Aaron mentioned, generosity is one of our values as an organization, and the way that that functions well is that the folks that we bring onto our team are also generous, and they believe in generously creating joy for each other. I want to give a shout out here to Robert Glazer. I don't know if he's still in the room, but he turned us onto this book and this process, and what it does is it allows us to get beyond what people can do, the technical skill set that they have. It actually helps us get to know who they are. So we systematically go through their job history and chronologically and get to see the patterns that they've exhibited beforehand, knowing that that's a pretty good predictive understanding of what they're going to do at our organization. And what's been great, since we've instituted this process about a year ago, we've had 100% satisfaction rate in terms of the people we've hired. So people are fulfilling their outcomes within 3 to 6 months of coming on board, and our hiring managers are just like through the roof with excitement of the people we have. So what happens once we've got the people, they have this capacity for joy, what does it look like to continue to cultivate that from a people perspective? For us, that starts with vulnerability. So that's our COO there in the corner next to me. And as Aaron mentioned, for us, leadership has to set the tone. So our leaders set the tone with being vulnerable, with taking opportunities to enjoy things, and let people know it's okay. Like, this is a good thing. It's a safe place. So first, we ask our team members to be vulnerable with clients. So this book, Getting Naked by Patrick Lencioni, that we give every single person who starts with us this book, and it helps orient them in towards how to engage with clients for the first time. And what it does is it helps diminish a lot of the anxiety that can come into play when you're engaging, particularly from a kind of consultant to client basis. And the way that we do that is we go back. We ask them to embrace humility and selflessness and being transparent. Then we also ask our team members to be vulnerable with each other. Now, this part is huge. So we spend at least one day and several follow-up meetings with every single team in our organization. So 8 hours with people who are very much billable for those hours. All get together in a room, and we work through what it means to be a team. And the foundation of that is building trust from a place of vulnerability. And not only have our teams kind of grown from an interpersonal skills perspective, which is wonderful and certainly helpful in the work that we do, but it also takes away a lot of the wasted time that happens when people are navigating ego or they're navigating the different politics that can happen in an organization because they trust each other and they believe the best about each other. And then finally what it does is it actually makes sure people actually enjoy the people they're working with. I think that was referenced in the last talk. When you're building connections with folks across your team, you're a lot more embedded. And doing these workshops has allowed us to have people who are connected to one another and actually enjoy working with one another, even under potentially stressful situations when something's happening with a client. This is all about the kind of small little things that add up to big impacts of joy. So when we're first bringing people on, that onboarding experience, we want people to know, hey, here's what you can expect from Wheelhouse. Here's what you can expect from your manager. And we utilize Tiny Pulse, but we use it in the context of many other kind of hands-on touches that let people know, hey, you're heard. And when you were interviewing, like, we really mean it. We really mean that this is a place of joy. We really mean that we want you here. And we really care about you. That's why we ask them about love languages. We want to know, how best do you feel appreciated? Are you a gifts person? Like, is it going to be more meaningful to you for us to give you a gift card? Or is it more meaningful if we let you have some time off to spend with your partner or significant other? Things like that. And we let our managers know what those things are so that they have the ability to show people appreciation in the way that's going to be most meaningful to them. And then throughout the year, our team members have opportunity to meet with our CEO and COO, have lunches with them, kind of break down some of that sense of barrier that can happen as organizations grow. We also focus our reviews on culture. A significant portion of our reviews focus on how have you engaged and connected with our culture, connected with joy, connected with generosity with your clients and with your team members. And we also, the last thing I want to touch on here is stay interviews. So that's another piece of continuing to collect information, but in a personal way. So I sit down with people for an hour and a half, 2 hours at their 1-year anniversary and say, okay, what are all the things that if we didn't change could potentially make you leave? And what's been great with most of them is not much, but it makes them feel heard, it makes them feel listened to, and helps them feel, yeah, Wheelhouse really cares about me as more than just a cog in a wheel.
Before you go on, so that word care is critical. It's essential that our team members, that the people who work for Wheelhouse feel cared for. It's one of the things that we measure. To feel cared for, you have to feel known, authentically known, fully known. If I were to tell all of you that I love you, none of you would believe me, because I don't know you. I might like you, I might have appreciated a conversation, but I don't know you. In order for you to know, in order for my care to land in a way that you believe, I have to know you. You have to know that I know you. And I have to know you in a more well-rounded, more complete way than just what exists at work. I'll say something else that is heretical. I actually don't believe much in work-life balance. I think that it's a farce, at least if you're in a job that's an intellectual job. The people who work for Wheelhouse think about work at home. Work becomes a part of what they need to do at home. And so if we're going to impose on their personal life, and we're going to ask them to, then it's unfair to ask them to compartmentalize and come to work and pretend that that personal life doesn't exist. So we have a very blended work experience. People frequently leave during the day and say, I need to go do this thing. And it's not a pretend doctor's appointment. They need to go do this thing. And it might be I have to get a massage, or it might be I need to do something else, or I'm going to go take a walk, or I'm going to go for a run. We want them to do that. We want them to be open about that. If there are things going on in personal lives that don't explicitly have to do with work, we want to know about those things and support people to the extent that they want us to know them. We talk a lot about people bringing their whole self to work, being exactly who they are, right? It's Howard's one hat notion. If you're going to wear one hat, there's going to be some messiness that exists outside of work that you're going to bring to work. We should know about that and help. It's going to affect the way that you behave at work. So we spend a lot of time on intimacy.
So a key part for us, as we kind of mentioned before, is empowering our managers to be advocates. So we want our managers to, we actually ask them, don't think about budget. Don't think about how much it costs to reward an employee, to let somebody go, a day, half day early so that they can enjoy the sunshine, because that's fairly rare here. And we ask them to also be first when it comes to thinking about compensation, because for us that's about generosity. It's about making the step forward that says, hey, we want to pay you well. This isn't about wanting to pay less. So we ask our managers to be advocates and be kind of the front lines for their team members. And as I mentioned before, it starts with them leading with vulnerability and with empathy. And we ask our managers to actually spend time investing in themselves. So they're reading books, they're talking with Erin, they're talking with other members of our leadership team to understand how to grow as people so that they can continue to better serve our team members. This book happens to be mentioned quite a bit this conference, which I love because this is a book that has been instrumental for us. So Radical Candor by Kim Scott, it's one of the books that we use to guide our manager development. The biggest thing that it's done for us is in a culture where joy is high in value and where we really love to celebrate people, it can also be easy for us sometimes to not give each other that critical feedback. It's kind of that shadow side of culture that Margaret Wheeler referenced yesterday. So what Radical Candor has done is said, you know what, it actually is better for our team members and obviously better for the organization if we're giving each other clear and direct feedback on a regular basis. Otherwise, we're going to hang out in that ruinous empathy quadrant where it looks like death and destruction are happening. Bad place. What we want to be is in that Radical Candor quadrant where people they know that they're valued, they know they're cared for, and they feel known. And from that place, they're able to receive that feedback and use that feedback to continue to deliver a client experience that goes above and beyond.
And this pertains to employee feedback. It also pertains to our relationships with clients. So we talk a lot about telling the kind truth, right? You tell the kind truth to a client. Sometimes the kind truth is, this is a disaster, and it's not salvageable. Or, you are the problem. And if you got out of the way, we could do our work, your team could do your work. But you can always do that in a way that is expressed kindly and is more easily heard by them. We do the same thing internally. So tough feedback but kindly delivered. And kindness and delivery of feedback like that is something that we measure.
So I want to pause here to talk about diversity and inclusion and creating a sense of belonging. So it's no secret that there is a kind of a problem with diversity in tech. We're a tech company, we acknowledge that. And so one of the things we thought of is, listen, if we're going to create a space for joy and we want to create a space where everyone feels like this is the best place to work, we want to do that for all kinds of people. We want any person from an underrepresented group to feel this as much as somebody from a majority group. So what that's meant for us is we actually need to be even more intentional in those spaces than we would have otherwise thought to be. For us, that started with listening. So we listened to experts, we sought consultants, we kind of went out into the diversity and inclusion expert field, but ultimately it was the people on our teams who helped us really understand what we could do as a small company to make a difference, to make them feel more welcome, more safe, and to have an equal seat at the table. Part of that has been with recruiting. We have instrumented some diverse interview panels. And we've also worked through retaining and what it means for people to have paths for growth. And ultimately, we talk a lot about learning. We learn from each other. We learn about unconscious bias. Those things are key. And also, we take the opportunities to think about, okay, what does grace and kindness and joy mean in the context of, hey, we grew up differently. Hey, our skin color is different. Hey, I'm part of this group that you may not understand. Let's learn from each other. Let's learn grace in that space and give opportunities for people to be their full selves, to be their authentic selves, and be able to experience the joy that comes with that.
One of the things you'll hear after the break from Sarah Bird is the way in which Moz has impacted the tech community in Seattle. And we are one of those companies impacted. So when we wanted to figure out how to focus on diversity and inclusion, I emailed Sarah. And Sarah connected us with one of her HR folks who recommended an outside consultant who helped us put together a series of learning labs. And that's made a huge difference for us.
And another key thing about diversity and inclusion is if it matters to you to make a difference, which it does for us, then you've got to make it a goal and you've got to track progress. So this is where we are as of about a month ago. You'll see that over time we've had some dips, we've had some valleys. Some of that's come as our organization grew, but then that particular group, the representation of that group didn't grow proportionally. So within the last year, we've made those different changes into our processes that have helped us be even more intentional so that we can see those trend lines go up and reach a place that's more proportional to what's out there in the world.
So we use TinyPulse in lots of ways. The biggest way is that we measure what is meaningful. And in this case, you can see a question that we recently asked. And you can see both the question, and you can also see that we're not up here to say that we're doing everything perfectly, and we're scoring perfect 10s on happiness. And everyone says, my manager loves me and knows me super well. In this case, what we want to know is, does your manager know you? Do you feel your manager knows you and understands you? That's critical. And we ask a series of questions like this, and you can see we have it too. And so that's an area that we dug into. We understand the issue, we've changed the issue, and we'll look for that to change dramatically the next time. We also understand that this result will change gradually over time. It's unreasonable to ask this question of someone who's been with us for 3 months and expect them to say, 10 out of 10, my manager knows me deeply and understands me really well. That takes time. We know it takes time. So developing and expressing joyfulness. This is my favorite part of this talk. So this is what we do with all of this. We do several things. So the first thing I want to talk with you about is the Joy Fund. So our values mean nothing if we don't express them, if we don't exercise them, if we don't put them into action in real and concrete ways. And so we do this in a number of fashions. The Joy Fund is a process through which every employee on the team gets $50 a month. There's one stipulation. You can spend it any way you like, but it has to deliver joy for another employee. You can gang together, you could spend $600 on something, you could save it up for months and buy something big. There are all kinds of things that people have done. We've purchased housekeeping for one employee who was a single mother for several months. We've sent people to the symphony, we've sent people to Hamilton, we've sent people to get a massage, all sorts of different things. Several neat things happen from that. So there's this notion called Hebbs Law or Hebbs Rule. It's from neurology, and it is that synapses that fire together wire together. That's the shorthand, right? If you create a habit neurologically, if you associate an event and an emotion and you do it again and again and again, then you create a mental habit and you create a craving Dopamine was mentioned earlier. Dopamine's fantastic, feels great in your brain, so does serotonin. If you do this, if you create this habit, you fire something pleasant in people's brains. You also give them the sense of their personal power and agency. As a person, I have the ability to make someone else's life better, to deliver joy to them. That's kind of intoxicating. It also makes me feel good, and it's something that I want again. It also turns out that the psychological research is clear. If you're feeling kind of bad, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling depressed in any other than a chemical way, one of the surest ways to feel better is to help someone else, and to do it repeatedly. So we do that repeatedly. We create this habit. We create a craving for helping other people. Wheelhouse journeys, we want intimacy. We want people to know one another, so we subsidize it. If 2 or more people from Wheelhouse want to go someplace together, we don't care where. We'll give them $200 a piece and go. And people do that. It's fantastic. Client delight gifts. Every week, we send a client a gift. We take notes on our clients. Someone mentions something about a child, a birthday coming up, hey, I've got this thing, or I had a particularly tough week. That's recorded, and it's reported back to someone who is responsible for client delight gifts. And every week, we send someone something. And that something is not a fruit basket. It is personal. It is specific. It is sent to a person with a note that has to do with what's happening in their life. We're cultivating relationships with people. By cultivating relationships, we improve the quality of their experience with us. We hopefully improve the quality of their life. We create strength and endurance and resilience in our relationship with them so that when things are not fantastic, and they almost are in any long-term relationship, it's a conversation, it's not a crisis, because we chat with them all the time. They know us, we know them. Generosity days. So once a quarter, we have our favorite day for me in the company's life. Once a quarter, we break into teams. At this point, we're about 40 folks, so they're teams of 8 to 10. Those teams meet weeks in advance, and they decide what people or causes or issues they want to spend a day on. They get to go out and spend the entire day working and serving other people. And then they get to make a donation as well. It's a big investment. Every quarter, we spend about $56,000 in billable time, and we donate between $5,000 and $10,000 in cash. And it's tremendously meaningful. So again, let's go back to psychological research. This has power in several ways. Go back to Hebbs Law. Again, we're doing something generous, we're delivering joy, we're helping other people, and that's tremendously powerful for the people who work at Wheelhouse. It creates meaning for them, and it tends to create gratitude because of the people we help and the things that we see. We do something else that's critical to creating value here, and that is that in order for something like this to have true meaning for the individuals involved, they have to choose the cause. They have to choose the issue. They have to choose the people. If it's corporate, if we say, today is United Way Day, and we're going to go out and do this thing, that's just a different day of work. They're being dictated to. But if you let people act on their personal passions and agency, that has tremendous power for them. And the people who work at Wheelhouse love this day. Love this day, even though the work that we do is not at all glamorous. Last Thursday was our last Generosity Day, and I spent about 4 hours scrubbing floors, cleaning toilets, washing very dirty walls. We spent about 90 minutes cleaning an oven that hadn't been cleaned in a really long time, in what amounts to a living room for folks who are homeless up on Aurora Avenue. There was nothing glamorous about that. It was really hot work, and the place was locked up, and it was a sunny day in Seattle, and so it was probably 90 degrees inside. We loved it. If you look at the picture at the end of that day of what my team and I were doing, we're all grinning like idiots because we were so happy. We knew that what we were doing was going to have so much meaning for the people who were going to spend days in that place. It's something beyond ourselves that makes such a difference. There are a few other things that come from Generosity Days. One is that in our work, we are almost always the experts. Clients come to us because we know things they don't. And one of the risks in always being the expert is that you can forget to be humble. You can forget that what the other person knows is of equal or greater value. and that you should listen. You can much better and much more effectively deliver the kind truth if you are humble about what you know. And so in these contexts, we are humble. We step into situations we know nothing about and are told by other people what we need to do. It is unglamorous work, but it reminds us of our place, and it creates a sense of gratitude. And again, that sense of gratitude creates a sense of wellness for the people who are involved. We've worked with more than 35 causes to date, and again, every quarter. So what are the byproducts of joy? What does this do from a business perspective? What's the practical value of all of this? Well, here's how it's turned out for Wheelhouse and how it continues to turn out. These are our fundamentals. Our average annual growth rate over 5 years, which I talked about before, is 55%. So kind of right on the hairy edge of sustainable growth, because we're funded through our own cash flow. 90% of our clients, so 9 out of 10, expand their initial engagement with us. Nearly all of our clients are multi-year clients. 94% of our growth comes through referrals. As I said, until June, I was business development. It's people coming inbound. And 88% of our clients stay with us year after year after year. So this works very well for us as a business, drives tremendous results, and drives tremendous quality of life for the people who work at Wheelhouse. As other speakers have alluded to, it's unreasonable to expect that people are going to stay at a company for years and years and years. We'll have them for some number of years, though. And my hope, my goal, my aspiration, and what we're shooting for is that when they leave Wheelhouse, they will feel like better people than when they came to Wheelhouse, that we will do something that is edifying to their lives. I'll share a couple of audacious observations in closing. So this fellow runs a company called Unmetric. It's an AI-driven social analytics firm. And he ran a study last year and delivered a TED Talk on this study, the focus of which was what he learned from studying 2,000 obituaries in the New York Times. What he really wanted to know was, what does a well-lived life look like? To make an obituary, to be included in an obituary in the New York Times, you must have done something fairly momentous. And in all likelihood, that was something positive. So as he analyzed these obituaries, he found one word repeated again and again and again. And that word was help. It's a core value for us. And it's what we're trying to do with the people who work for us. It's also what we're trying to do with our community, with everyone we touch. We are audacious. We want to make a dent in the universe. Ours is not a technology dent. Ours is a dent in terms of improving the quality of life for the people who work for us and the people we touch. So we do Generosity Days 4 times a year. 4 times a year, currently 40 people go out and help other groups of people. And by the way, the one rule for Generosity Day is that whatever you do has to be as close as possible to the people you're helping. You can't drive up to a big organization, drop off a check, and sort some paper. You need to be as close as you can to the people you're helping. So we've done the math. We think we've got a good shot at making a dent in the universe. Here's the math. 40 people, even just once a year, helping 2 people. If those 2 people go on to help 2 people each of the subsequent years, and we continue this as we have year after year, over the course of 20 years, that touches 42 million people. So we do think we can make a dent in the universe. We do think we're on our way. We're about 8 years in. And that's how we create and cultivate a culture of joy.
Thank you two so much. So if you go to Slido, we'll take some questions. So the first question is, to Howard Bihar's point, can you tell us what happens when people make mistakes at your company? How do you manage and grow with big money accounts at stake?
That's a great question. Do you want to take a shot at that?
Sure. When we're at our best, then we get together, we talk about what happened and how to address what happened, how to solve for it. We try very hard not to allow a culture of blame. The rule at Wheelhouse is you praise in public and you criticize in private. And so if there truly is a grievous error and it's an honest mistake, we're going to talk about that in private. If it's sloppiness, we're still going to talk about that in private. So I guess the rule is If there is truly someone at fault, that will be a private matter. Anything public will be focused simply on solving the problem, working together, and moving forward.
Got it. This one specifically for you, Aaron. This approach seems revolutionary. What was the original genesis behind putting joy first?
When I started the company, I thought, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to have my own company, why not create a company that works the way I think a company should? Not the way companies do. My background is as a marketing executive. I started with McCaw Cellular and then AT&T Wireless. I was a VP of Sales and Marketing and then had other VP, SVP roles. And I was at some great places. But what I couldn't understand is that when people went to work, particularly at an executive level, you were asked to compartmentalize, to put aside a set of behaviors and beliefs that go right back to early childhood. The things that you're taught, right? Be kind, look out for other people, be generous, all of those things. You're asked in many places to compartmentalize and to go to work and now to seek advantage and look for leverage and to monetize relationships and drive profit at the expense of other things. And yes, I know there is this human aspect over here, but we really need to drive to a business outcome. To create contracts that are super tight because the person on the other side is going to look to get you on the contract. And my experience with people is very different than that. My experience is that almost everyone I meet is a great person. So my hypothesis was, what if we created a company that functioned like the best people I know? And what if we were explicit about that? And what if the actual business operations were built around those values? Could that work? And my thought was, it's really only worth having a business if it can work like that, because I'm really no good at the other kind of business that looks for profit and seeks advantage.
Great. So sounds like you are all based out of the same office. Is that correct?
No.
That's not correct.
Oh, great. Well, then maybe you can answer the second part. Is how would you create joy with a remote or disparate workforce?
Yeah, so we actually have a team in Virginia, about 3 folks. They actually started, back in September of last year, so it's been about a year. And then we until recently, had somebody in California and somebody in Eastern Washington. So part of that has come from people may have started in our organizations, they're kind of inculcated into that joy, and then moved out, which was great. But our Virginia team, they started there. So part of that has been, I think somebody mentioned having video chats. So we'll have what we call I don't think we've come up with a good name. Sometimes it's brunch, sometimes it's working together Fridays. We play around with different puns. But basically, we put the video chat on. People come on with their different screens. We're either having breakfast, Virginia team is having lunch, California's enjoying the sun, and we're all working together and chatting, and we might share videos. We might talk about, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Just creating opportunity, those social experiences that normally happen when you're face-to-face. We try to create those opportunities virtually. And then I think the other part that's key actually goes back to the fact that we are hiring people who believe they have a capacity for joy. So they think about, hey, my work has meaning. There's joy in the work that I'm doing. And I have the opportunity to create joy for other people. I think Darla, who's one of our remote folks who lives in Eastern Washington, she's probably one of our most prolific Joy Fund users. She's constantly pinging me and saying, hey, I want to get this to this person. Can you make sure that it gets to them? Stuff like that. So it's more a part of getting them into the traditions.
So this is Laura, who works out of our Richmond, Virginia office, and she just had her 1-year anniversary. And unscripted, she posted this yesterday on LinkedIn to celebrate her 1-year anniversary. And what's very hard to read there, but what she says is, yay, for me, it's my 1-year anniversary, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of a team that is based on helpfulness and generosity, trust and stewardship, but especially joy. Especially joy. That makes such a difference in the quality of experience for our employees, even in Richmond. The other thing that we do very deliberately and systematically with folks who are remote is that I talk with them much more frequently. So I have a standing video session with the folks in Richmond once every 2 weeks, and more often if they want it, and there is no agenda. It's just, how are you doing? What do you want to talk about? Can I do anything for you? Do you need anything here? Are you feeling connected? What are you going to do for your next Generosity Day? How did your last one go? What was meaningful or resonant about that, and how are you going to do it next time? It's just staying connected with them.
So if people really resonate with this approach, how do you train the managers? Is there a course, a trainer, a book, a video, any types of recommendations for the audience?
All of the above. So we do have monthly manager meetings that are focused on people. So whether it's, hey, what does it look like to practice empathy? That was our latest one. It's actually going to probably go for a couple more times now. We even talk maybe more concretely about what does it mean to have a good one-on-one? How do you take our values and how does that apply to one-on-ones? What's funny is Laura is actually one of our highest rated managers, and one of her team members who rated her the highest is in Seattle. So she's a remote manager, managing a person in Seattle, who says she's killing it. And doing so because she focuses on checking in personally. Again, going back to that, our personal, our work lives are not separate. She's asking her, hey, how are things going? Oh, you're thinking about getting a puppy? Laura in the background starts saying, people, let's get together and get our little puppy basket. And so the Joy Fund went to a puppy basket for Leanne. And yeah, so it's a mixture of those meetings, but also the people that we're bringing on board. When people are brought up to be managers, most of our managers are hired from within. We have a conversation about, hey, here's the expectations of what it means to be a manager. Here's a book, Radical Candor. One of the other books we're exploring right now is called Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. And I think there's a plethora of other ones. Love to chat if you're interested afterwards.
So there are a couple other things. Our values are really well established. They've been explicit, they've been unchanged for years. And when people are hired in, not just values fit, but a lot of discussion about values is a part of the hiring process. And that's required, not just to make sure that we have fit, but also because if our values don't make sense to you, our whole company's not going to make sense to you. Our focus on joy is going to seem weird. The fact that we take this day and we go serve other people is going to seem an imposition because I have work to do and this is a practical environment. It's about delivering, right? There are all sorts of things that we need to know. So our values are certainly baked into everything that we do in all of our decision making. The other thing we have is a really clear model for service that we're starting to formalize more and more. I don't know if any of you have ever stayed at a high-end hotel, in particular the Ritz-Carlton. So the Ritz-Carlton service model is unique and special in that even when you stay at the hotel, they want to know you, and they do know you. They know you over time. If you ever stay at one of their properties, everything that you express as an interest, everything that you express as an appreciation will be noted. And the next time you show up at a property, those people will know. And those things will have been anticipated and be present for you. And we try very hard to do that with our clients and with our employees. That's even part of the philosophy around compensation. Let's anticipate need. Let's make sure that we're serving the people who work for us and the people who are our clients. And later this year, we'll formalize that by actually sending people to a Ritz-Carlton service training course.
Cool. So what happens if someone's default personality is more serious against this context of joy?
Joy can be quiet. Joy doesn't have to be ebullient. It doesn't have to be effusive. It doesn't have to make a lot of noise. That's that last picture. That also, by the way, is kind of my personality. I enjoy this very much, but off stage, I'm kind of an introvert. I like a lot of time to myself. I'm fairly quiet, but I'm a fairly joyful person. There is no expectation that people run around the office throwing confetti at each other. There's just an expectation that we should all know and pursue what gives us joy. And for some of us, that's time alone with a book. For some of us, it's a long walk. For some of us, it's something much louder and it involves a lot of other people. And there's room for all of that.
Great. So last question. What are your recommendations for those of us that work at larger organizations with maybe 5,000 plus employees if we want to do something like what you folks are doing?
So I'd say figure out where you can start. So where are you right now? Are you a manager of a team? What does your team culture look like? How can you get to know your team members better, make them feel known, make them feel valued? I actually highly recommend either the Love Languages book or there's kind of a work version of it called Languages of Appreciation. Just honestly making people feel known and cared for does a lot for bringing joy into your space. Maybe you're at a higher level, you're a director or you lead a huge department. Again, think about what's just one step that you can take. Is it training your managers? Is it thinking about having a day to celebrate some big win? Or maybe it's even celebrating at the kickoff of a project. Often I feel like kickoffs can feel stressful because you're looking at this looming amount of work coming your way, but it's an opportunity to think about the possibilities of things. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I would just add to that ultimately all of this is personal. The way that we cultivate joy is personal. It's not institutional. It's always people who are in interaction. And you can be in a really big organization, but still make sure that your personal interactions skew in this direction, that your team is managed and led in this direction, that you get to know people and you notice things about them and you act on those things that you notice and let them know that they're seen, that they're valued, that you know what gives them joy, and that you want to give that experience to them.
And then I want to add just one more thing actually on top of that. You don't always have to have a lot of budget for that either. So depending on where you are in your organization, maybe you don't have the opportunity to ask for a certain line item to celebrate your team, but it can come through those little personal touches and interactions with people.
Ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Burnett, Cindy Larson.